You got disconnected, no? You got
Yes, sir.
disconnected.
Yeah, sir.
Again you are joining. You have all joined.
Yes.
You have rejoined. You have rejoined. Don't worry.
So there was an internet connectivity issue. I got disconnected.
Yeah. Not you.
நீங்க இப்ப
Me
சென்னை
also.
Everybody
கிளம்பிட்டீங்கன்னா
got
Me
2
also.
பேர் வந்து வண்டி எடுத்துட்டு இப்ப சாரி எடுத்து போயிருவாங்க. கடையில திறந்துட்டாங்க. அதுக்கு தான் உங்களுக்கு சென்னை கிளம்புங்கன்னு இருக்காங்க.
Yeah. Absolutely true.
இதுதான்.
What is happening? These people are really. I don't know. I will have to complain like anything, but how does it matter? Whatever bamboo is to be given has already been given. So after that, whether they are there or not, how does it matter to me as far as this course is concerned? Yeah, what I was referring to is, please, yeah, I was telling the moment my eye was closed because I was just asking you the question that this A to B and B to C and C to D in terms of heat transfer, these are known as dot heat. What is that dot? Any sir, any madam is taker? Hello.
So can you repeat that?
I said from point A to S, from point B to C, from point C to D, the type of heat which is being transferred in terms of heat transfer is known as dot heat. That what is that dot heat? The moment I tell you, it is like that keeping egg on the table. The moment I break and keep it on the table, it is very simple. Here also it is very simple, but it may not strike. Here it is called A to B.
Sensibility and latent.
Absolutely true. Both sir and madam, both true. Thank you very much. So A to S, this is called sensible heat. B to C is called latent heat, and again C to D is called sensible heat. It is the ice sensible heat, it is the water sensible heat, and it is the latent heat of fusion of water. Right. However, so this is what is the truth that initial supercooling or that supercooling is required. We go back to that again. Yeah. So here these three are the independent variable, that temperature, then the supercooling, and the rate of heat removal. I give the example of rate of heat removal. Okay. I don't know whether you have experienced it or not. Suppose your freeze is very good, right? And your freeze, there is a deep freezer, and down below there are some racks. And in a metal container, whatever you call it, that bati, what we call it, bati, or blah 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 blah. It's a small metal container. You have taken a little water, two such. One you have kept in the deep freezer, and one you have kept outside the deep freezer. Your friends have come to booze, so you have made it as much as possible, right? So, which one will freeze first? I repeat the question. In two metal containers of say 50 ml in size, you have kept water, and one you have kept in the deep freezer of your refrigerator, and another down below the deep freezer there is a tray, so there you have kept, and the freezer is working very nice. So which one will freeze first?
Deep
In
freezer.
the deep freezer.
In the deep freezer, absolutely right. Why? Because the deep freezer temperature is say around -10, say, right? Whereas outside in the tray, the temperature is somewhere say around 4 or 3 at the most. If it is very, very good freezer, say 3 around. So -10 will be much quicker than at 3. It will also freeze. You will see, maybe today, may not be today, tomorrow, you will see that the entire thing got frozen. Right? Though you may say it is at 3 degree, but how it is happening? Water is 0 degree, right? So it will take its latent heat from there, because so much of it is there, it will automatically, you can try. I am again saying you can try. It will happen. And that's what you also have seen. Your mummy and other seniors have seen that if they keep, if the freeze is very good, then if things are kept at, because freeze has different that knob setting. So if it is setting is too low, then that even outside things also in some cases get frozen or very, very, very cold. Okay, this is not our point. Our point is that that was saying rate of heat removal, not only -10, but also that is 1, because as you know that dq is minus k a d dt dx, right? So from there you can find out that this will be a rate of heat removal. Both temperature as a delta T will be a function. However, so rate of heat removal, then our supercooling and the temperature difference being function or independent variables. The dependent variable is rate of nucleus or nucleus formation. So rate of nucleus formation, that is away from the origin. So not at 0, but lower than 0, right? It is at minus, indicating that it is less than 0 degree. Well, I think it is in centigrade, because though the unit is not given, because 0 Fahrenheit is how much? Any idea? 0 Fahrenheit is how much? Any idea?
Sir, around minus 17.
Yeah, exactly, minus 17 point something, and that is why we always refer to minus 18 as the datum temperature. Minus 18, because minus 17 point something is 0 Fahrenheit. When centigrade was not discovered, Fahrenheit was there. People have seen if things are at 0 Fahrenheit, then it stays for several weeks, months, years, depending on the product, right? And that is why minus 18 is also taken as the datum for the temperature below or at which food materials remains very, very good. Reason being, minus 18 corresponds to 0 Fahrenheit, right? Okay, then this is not 0 centigrade, lower than that. Then the nucleus formation, that is what supercooling we have shown. So that rate of nucleus formation starts from there, right? And as it starts, it increases. This nature of curve is known as, Any taker? This nature of curve is known as, this is hand drawn, I have drawn, so may not be exactly correct. But this nature of the curve is known as, any taker? Madam, sir, anybody?
No, sir.
Sir,
No, sir.
S curve, S curve.
No, what is S, Baba? It is a straight line. I drew it, so this became like that. I drew it from this point to that point, so it remained like that. It is a straight line, more or less, right? So this nature is, there is no S. Anybody else? Any try? No. So this is known as exponential curve. The growth is exponentially happening, right? This growth of the nucleus is exponentially happening, right? So once the nucleus is formed, then it becomes the growth. You see, the growth can be taken place at 0. So it is passing through origin. So it can take place at 0, and the nature of the curve is curvilinear. It should have been a little more curved, but again I drew it, so it might not have been correct. So it's a curvilinear. Kon Baba? হ্যাঁ বাবা, আমি ক্লাসে আছি, একটু বাদে কর না। ওকে ওকে। So what is happening? So this is a curvilinear. That means as it is passing through, that means the growth can be, though the nucleus formation is required to be lower than 0 degree, but the growth can be even at 0 degree, and it follows a curvilinear curve. Okay, and both the axes are same. Here also temperature and rate of heat removal, and the third one was your that what third one was that thing, what degree of supercooling. Okay, so rate, and this is the rate of crystal growth. Okay, now once we know this, then I am not going to tell. Then it comes, what we will tell, how we will define freezing rate. Freezing rate we can define, if it is slow, then it is between 1 degree centigrade to 10 degree centigrade per hour. Then it is a slow freezing. Normally our household refrigerator, they come under this category, slow freezing, 1 degree centigrade to 10 degree centigrade per hour. Then commercial freezing. Commercial freezing is normally between around plus minus 50 degrees centigrade. This is the rate at which commercial freezers do work. And another is ultra rapid freezing or rapid freezing or ultra fast freezing, whatever you call, that is at 100 degrees centigrade or above per hour, right? So this is exactly the way the freezing rates are defined. Then we come how it looks like. This is a view under microscope, a comparative study between slow freezing and fast or quick freezing, right? Fast, super fast, quick, all are same. So slow freezing versus rapid freezing, if we have a microscopic view, and if we look at, we know, if we, this is a microscopic view, so that means the cells, everything are enlarged many times. That you know, microscopes do. So cells and everything are increased. So if these are cells and tissues, and as we know that all food materials, they are homogeneous in nature. So the cell distribution, then tissue distribution, water distribution, everything are there. So there are intermolecular, see this is tissue or intertissue, intermolecule, whatever we call, water, and intra, within, water molecules are there, right? Say now, for comparison, we take one such nucleus which has happened. This is a grown, I mean, magnified. So one such nucleus has happened, right? So if this nucleus is now under slow freezing, means lot of time it is taking to freeze. So what we will tell, it will then gradually grow in size in such a way that these are all surrounding tissues, right? You just imagine the place where you were sitting at this very moment, like me, right? If some 10 people are around me, right? And they were very close each other. And now, if suddenly I come from outside and sits there, what they will do? They will make like this, you know, that puffed rice. That puffed rice, when you make it, it takes its space. Similar to that, that this the enlarged ice crystal, the tissue and cells, they will change their size, shape, etc. everything, and allow it the ice to grow. They have no option, right? Like today, we are buying 100 rupees oil. Do you have any option? No. Here also, they have no option. So it is getting deformed, right? And at some point, it may be so that the cells and tissue may tear, may break up, right? And the moment it is breaking up, nothing is wrong till that time. But it is now frozen. Now you think the reverse. After freezing, before taking, other than ice cream, no perhaps other thing you take directly from the freezer, other than ice cream, right? So what you do, you thaw. Thawing means the reverse of freezing. You are warming, thawing. So what will happen? These cells or tissues, they are already deformed, right? Oh, one more thing, very essential is that, you know that USA 9/11, that story? Yeah, it is very much heart-rending, but that 9/11 is also associated with it. Not that 9/11, but 9/11 is associated with it. Because we know that 9 volume of liquid water, when it is getting frozen, then its volume increased to 11 volume, right? If it is 9 cc to 11 cc, if it is 9 meter cube to 11 meter cube. So 9/11, this conversion is there for liquid to solid, right? So that means 9 volume was originally present. Now it has become 11 volume, and that got also increased. Now, when the reverse heating is done, the cells and tissues which are already deformed or broken, they are not elastic. They cannot go back to its original. But the ice which was there, so this on melting will become water, but it will take less space, right? But the already broken tissues and cells. Through that, some water will come out. Right? Whereas if it is a quick or rapid freezing, that means in slow freezing, number of crystals formed are very low and size of the crystal formed are very high. And because of that, the after thawing, the loss of the liquid loss means your food, it contains 60% water. So out of which if 10% is lost, then you are losing food weight also, no? That water is equivalent to the food weight, food price, right? So you are losing that 10, 12, 15% of water, which is absolutely not desirable. Whereas if we do rapid or quick freezing, then the rate of cooling is so fast. All those three factors, that is rate of cooling or temperature difference, or the third factor, that is supercooling, is also very high. So all these three factors will make the number of crystals very high, size of the crystals very low. Since the difference between 9 and 11, you can make it 2. But what is the difference between 0.9 and 0.11? Only 0.2. What is the difference between 0.09 and 0.01? Again, very low. 0.09, to X blah blah. So the lower the size, the change is as low, is not perceivable. What bigger the size, like this, 900 to 1100, 200, 9,000 to 11,000, 2,000. So the bigger the size, bigger is the volume. Smaller the size, smaller is the volume. So that small volume of ice crystals, more in number, will be obtained, and upon thawing, since the change was nominal, so they will not replace or displace the cell and tissues from there, right? So this is how the difference between slow freezing and rapid freezing are there. That in rapid freezing, number of crystals formed are very high, and size of crystals formed are very low, whereas in slow freezing, number of crystals formed are very, very low, and size of the crystals formed are very high. That is why the drip loss, the loss which will be after thawing, that is called drip loss. So drip loss may be around 10 to 50% in slow freezing, whereas in quick freezing it may not be at all. ও বাবা আবার চলে গেল আর পারি না I don't know where it is going and why it is going. Oh, these people are also fine. They are joining me like anything. Anytime, any moment they want. Jawab tuja. Why it is going up so much, so many times? God only knows. Don't know. However, so we come to, from there, another thing which we said, this, that Raoult's law, right? Or bound water. Bound water also can be understood from this. Suppose we have taken 1 liter of 2 unfrozen. This is that 1%, and in one case we have 5 number of solutes, in other case say 30 number of solutes, right? So after freezing, it is called frozen 1 liter. After freezing, we got this type of ice as it is under hash, and the remaining green color 5 solutes are there. This green color means unfrozen water. There 5 solutes are there, and in this, after freezing, we got, this is the ice formed, and here green color, that S got masked. All these 15 S's are there, right? So we can say that concentration of unfrozen water, if 5 solutes per liter and 15 solutes per liter, right? Now, the most fundamental thing is that the concentration of this is unfrozen water. This concentration of unfrozen water, in the originally it was 5 in liquid, 15 in the liquid. Now in the unfrozen part, we have now 5 and 15, right? So this corresponds to that. The amount of ice formed is around 5/16 parts of the entire, whereas it is half part of the entire, right? So this is actually half. The concentration of remaining solution is gradually increasing with the number of solutes, right? Which corroborates that the what we are referring to, that the bound water, that bound water is always there, and which is known as unfreezable water, right? This is the unfreezable water that is associated with all the food materials or most of the food materials. Okay, another very important thing which I was referring to is the eutectic point or eutectic temperature. Eutectic temperature, as I said, for the case of lolly, that there was a pond and the pond temperature is -30, -40, depending on what the lollies you are making of. Similarly, this is a parameter by which we can come to know that at what temperature the solution will become frozen, that is phase changed ice, or it will remain as liquid, right? That is the parameter known as eutectic point or eutectic temperature. This is defined as the freeze concentration process progresses. Yes, again,
अब इसको म्यूट करके नीचे छोड़ दो
again.
देखो और पार्ट साथ ही ये वो ये पार्ट तो है ना
You please keep your mic. Please keep your mic mute. Okay. Now, eutectic point or eutectic temperature is that as the sir and madam, any sir and any madam who are keeping their mic on, please keep your mic off. Please. Otherwise, it is making huge sound. Okay. So the eutectic point or eutectic temperature can be defined as the freeze concentration process progresses, solutes reach or exceed their respective saturation concentrations, and simultaneous crystallization of ice and solute that becomes possible. The temperature at which a crystallized solute can exist in equilibrium with ice and the unfrozen phase is known as the eutectic point or eutectic temperature of the solute. I repeat, the temperature at which a crystallized solute can exist in equilibrium with ice and the unfrozen phase is known as the eutectic point or eutectic temperature of the solute. For example, I don't know whether you are able to see or not with this bar. I am not able to see, and that is perhaps here sodium chloride is given. Sodium chloride is minus 19 or something. Maybe glucose is given, that is maybe minus 5 or something. So depending on the salt, this eutectic temperature is different. None of them, whatever here given, is less than minus 20. So how come minus 40 is coming? So this is the company secret. You will never come to know. Nobody, no industry fellow will tell you what is the composition of their eutectic mixture, because this is their company secret. So they must have been using some material whose eutectic temperature is much below, and a combination of that and higher temperature is making a resultant of minus 30 or minus 40 as the eutectic temperature. So where the liquid is remaining as liquid, right? This liquid is different. Okay, what I was referring earlier that I have not answered to you is that minus 40 how people used to keep, because if you take pure water, as pure as you can think of, nothing is there, as pure as you can think of. If you take pure water, I hope you have seen at your home there are thermoflux, right? Thermoflux you have seen, and in that thermoflux, both outside and inside, you can see your face. It is like a mirror, meaning that it is polished, right? So if the polishing is so fine, because for nucleation you have to have one site. That site can be any dissolved material, that site can be any dust particle, that site can be any site of the container, etc. It has to have one nucleation formation site. So if the container is so highly polished that there is no site for formation of the ice crystal, because you have taken absolutely pure water. There is nothing other than H2 and O. There is nothing other than that, right? Absolutely pure. And you have made your container so fine that the gap between, I mean, the polish is so thick, so beautiful that there is no chance of formation of the ice crystal, right? That is why your water is remaining as water, not it is changing its phase from the liquid phase to the solid phase, right? This is
Sir,
how.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yes, yes.
Sir, actually, when it is a homogeneous nuclear formation, that is being helped by quick freezing, or it is another phenomenon?
No, homogeneous is that your food material is homogeneous, and your change of temperature is also homogeneous. Your everything is uniform, homogeneous. Then it is homogeneous. But heterogeneous can be non-uniform, right? Okay, I think our next faculty might have joined. Professor
Yes, sir. Thank you.
P.S. Rao. Professor P.S. Rao,
Yes, sir.
you have joined.
Yeah, I have joined.
Okay, okay. Let me introduce him. Before that, let me come out of it. Keep processing. Presentation, stop presentation. আরে এত ঝামেলা করছে না এটা? I don't know why it is so bad. I have paid additionally to make it from A1 to A3. God knows. Where are you? You are not visible, sir.
Sir,
You are not visible.
I'm not visible.
No.
My picture is very clear for me.
Oh, that is yours, but you keep your video on and off like that.
Okay.
Still, you are not visible.
Okay, maybe background might be blur, but I've just I intentionally kept blur.
But nothing. Your face is not at all visible.
Is it?
Neither PPSR, that is PS, it will come minimum 2 words. Those two also is not there.
Achha.
So it's visible, sir.
Where? Now it is visible. Now you are visible. Savas. He is our Professor P.S. Rao, right?
Hello.
Perhaps he can be said as the man of high pressure processing. It is very, very unfair to say only high pressure processing, because he has been doing many versatile applications, versatile things, right? And he is our professor. So he will now take care of 2 classes from 11 to 12 and then 2 to 3. I gave this opportunity to him, that instead of my taking 9 to 11, you can also take 9 to 11 and I can share it. But he said, okay, no, the way you have given, keep it like that. One more thing, dear participants, I would like to really confess that in the timetable schedule, unfortunately, by mistakes from where I have no idea how did I do it, the last date was shown as 16/6/16 or things like that, right? 16/6 or 16 like that, but it is not. It should be 8/7/2021. Please make that correction. And in the last date before the exam, your submission of this is required, right? Your submission of the feedback online, maybe in the portal of the Atal, that is mandatory, right? So first from 2 to 3 you will do your submission, and exactly at 3 o'clock we will start our exam again for 1 hour. Exactly not 1 hour, it is 59 minutes 59 seconds, right? So 59 minutes 59 seconds. Before that you have to submit whatever you have done. You know submission, you're typically absent, because it will be evaluated by computer. Okay, so with this, let me hand over to Professor P.S. Rao. Thank you,
Sir. Hello, sir.
Somebody is waiting
Yes.
in lobby, it seems, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello, TKG, sir.
Yes.
Sir, the exam link will be sent by email, correct? Because we don't
Yes.
have access to chat
Yes,
box.
yes. By the whatever originally I had sent, the same, because I don't know still how many of you are present out of 172, who are present, who are not. That these people will make. However, I will send the exam copy to everybody, even those who have not attended. I feel they cannot pass, should not be able to. Otherwise it has no meaning. So let me give to everybody of 172, because I cannot distinguish between who have attended and who have not. I would like to send to only those who have only attended, but that is beyond my scope at this moment. If I can do that with the help of this Microsoft people, obviously I'll send to you only. Okay, now it is Professor P.S. Rao, right? And he will take the 2 consecutive classes. Thank you.
So thank you very much for a
Yeah.
wonderful introduction. I think some people are waiting in lobby. Can you please allow them? And message is coming. People are waiting in lobby.
Where is that? I'm not getting.
Just check your lobby. Twice it flashed.
Huh?
2 times actually it flashed on screen. People are waiting in lobby.
Yes, somebody raised their hand. And where is that lobby? I am not finding out, Baba.
Okay. Okay. Then once again, if it comes, then I'll let you know.
Not let me know. You allow it, no?
If I can do, I will definitely. So
You can also do. You can also do.
okay, fine.
Because yesterday he was doing our Kanishk Bhuya.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Good morning, one and all. Present online for this session. As sir introduced, we were working on high pressure processing for quite a long time, and with my little experience, I would like to take you through this application of high pressure processing in food preservation and processing in most cases. So maybe with a little bit of initial briefing, then I'll take you to the actual applications. What is this high pressure processing? If you look at, it is one of the novel non-thermal technologies for food preservation. And one of the most successful developments made to date is high pressure processing among, of course, non-thermal technologies. It is relatively new concept compared to your conventional thermal processing. Of course, thermal processing is well known. We will be talking about that one in one of the next slides. And obviously, HPP also is receiving wide attention these days. So these non-thermal processes, why actually we require? These actually can be used for inactivation of food spoilage microorganism without affecting the quality. So that is actually most important thing as far as non-thermal technologies are concerned in general, and HPP is concerned in particular. So this high pressure processing, it has several synonyms. Like this is also known as high hydrostatic pressure processing, because the pressure applied is, am I audible to all, and my slides are visible?
Yes, audible.
Okay, great. So this high pressure processing is also known as hydrostatic pressure processing, because the pressure which is applied is using a hydrostatic medium, some liquid medium we are using for creating the pressure around the sample. So that's why it is also termed as hydrostatic pressure processing. It is also called as hyperbaric pressure processing, ultra high pressure processing, and sometimes in the initial stages people have called it as Pascalization also. Now, if you look at the traditional thermal methods, of course, these are actually well known. So the food can be preserved or may be processed both by thermal as well as non-thermal processes. The heat treatment of foods is necessary to kill harmful bacteria in foods so that the shelf life can be extended and the food safety can be ensured. So the thermal processing like heating or maybe cooking, this of course adversely affect the quality of the food, in addition to positive effect of inactivating the microorganisms. So the conventional methods of thermal processing often produces a number of undesirable changes in food, such as loss of color, flavor, and functionality. So that can be avoided using alternative minimal processing strategies or even non-thermal technologies. As you know today, the increased consumers' interest in high quality foods with fresh like sensory attributes. People are actually not bothered about the cost. If you can give them a quality food, of course, it's not a very generalized, what I can say, trend, but at least there are people who can afford to purchase quality food with whatever may be the price. So when people are looking for fresh like or maybe improved quality food without any kind of additives, so scientists were looking for alternative technologies. So this one, so this assured safety is another aspect, of course. So this has led to development of several novel food processing technologies as an alternative, and out of that, high pressure processing is one of the new technologies or maybe novel technologies that has actually come into existence and in practice today. And if you look at several emerging technologies in the food processing, many of you are aware of these things. So high pressure processing, of course, which you are going to discuss today, apart from this, we are having high intensity pulsed electric field, which is also known as PEF in short. Pulsed light, where actually high intensity light pulses are being focused, or maybe you can say flashed on the food material. Although this one is particularly the surface treatment, but it is also gaining importance in some of the commodities, particularly the meat-like products, fresh aquatic products, where the surface contamination need to be controlled. Then oscillating magnetic field, this is another non-thermal technology, although it is not very successful and still in the initial stages of development or maybe experimentation only. Ultrasound, it is being used very widely in various applications. Cold plasma is another technology. Ozone water treatment, of course, again, it is a surface sanitation treatment only. Similarly, if you come to the processing operations, cryogenic grinding, where you can grind the spices or maybe such kind of high value commodities, maybe medicinal herbs, etc., using a low temperature environment. Maybe sir might be discussing about cryogenic grinding in more detail, but just to name it. So this also can improve the quality or maybe maintain the quality of the food material. Gamma irradiation, of course, every one of you might be aware, and this is another non-thermal technology. Although again, for a small sample or maybe you can say regular consumer-based products, this is not, but in bulk product commodity treatment, gamma irradiation is another technology which is being used. UV radiation, of course, so it is in different scales, these are available. Similarly, supercritical CO2 extraction. These are actually several emerging technologies which are available in the food processing. Now, if you come to the high pressure processing, so these are the people who are pillars of high pressure processing around the world, and they are actually pioneers basically, and they have developed a lot of applications, and of course, so a lot of technologies have been commercialized through them. So now, if you look at, so this is actually not required, we have already done. So if you look at the principles of high pressure processing, so there are three basic principles which are normally being considered for high pressure processing applications. Isostatic principle is one of the fundamental and important this thing, where application of pressure is instantaneous and uniform throughout the sample. So that means, with irrespective of the size of the sample, irrespective of the shape of the sample, the pressure can transmit and reach to the central core within no time. Unlike your thermal processing, where it requires a longer time to penetrate and of course reach to the central core, so this can be applied instantaneously and more uniformly throughout the sample. Although people are finding some kind of anomalies, but most more or less actually it is much more uniform compared to your thermal processing. The second principle is Le Chatelet's principle, which is basically based on the volume change, which will be influencing your reaction. So the high pressure, when you are applying the volume change, that actually get influenced your reactions. For example, reaction with a volume decrease are accelerated. Reactions with a volume increase, they are actually suppressed. So based on this, you will be applying into the different commodities. Generally, the second one, volume increase, actually it happens in case of gaseous compounds, but most of the food products, the volume decrease is the major phenomena, and thus actually it may be less effect or maybe more effect, but the acceleration would be there. Now, the third principle, of course, which is basically the reason for your modifications in the structure. So the principle of microscopic reordering. So at constant temperature, the increase in the pressure, so this will increase the degree of ordering the molecules. So therefore, the pressure and temperature, they exert antagonistic forces on molecular structure. So that's why when you're using combined thermal and pressure, the pressure effect will be slightly subsided, but the together effect will be more. So that way actually the microscopic reordering will be influencing your process efficiency. Now looking forward, how much high pressure? So generally the high pressure processing, it is applied in the wide range of 100 to 900 megapascal, but commercially it is limited only up to 600 megapascal because of the equipment cost as well as the process efficiency. And if you look at 100 megapascal, which is equivalent to 1000 atmospheres. So that means 900 megapascal is 9000 atmospheres, which is quite a huge pressure. So this is actually symbolically said. So two elephants which are standing on 1 centimeter square hub. So that is the pressure which is exerted, which will be to the level of 1000 megapascal, right? I think somebody is still waiting. One minute, just hold on. I think somebody is waiting, so let me. I think okay, possibly I think I'm not able to do that thing. The slides are visible now. Let's continue.
Yes, sir. Slides are coming.
Yeah. Okay, fine. I think somebody was waiting there. I could not enter them anyway. Now, what is actually exactly happening when high pressure is applied? In terms of bonds, the covalent bonds they never get affected by your high pressure processing. Thus, the flavor notes and the color compounds, these are actually well retained. Whereas the changes which are happening in terms of other microorganisms or maybe enzymes, etc., that's because the hydrogen bond, hydrophobic interactions, and electrostatic interaction, these are actually generally affected by your high pressure. So that's the reason. So the microbes, because of the cellular disruption, it is actually getting inactivated. Similarly, the enzymes, because of unfolding of the structure of the enzyme in terms of its protein structure, so those are actually getting inactivated. However, the resistance or maybe sensitivity, it depends upon the species. Now, as far as the beneficial effects are concerned, so this high pressure processing can be applied at elevated pressures up to 900 megapascal, as I already mentioned, with or without addition of heat. So you can do it ambient condition also. Even you can do it below ambient condition, like actually lower than ambient conditions, including the chilled or maybe frozen condition also, these can be applied. And of course, you can, if you want to have a combination of the temperature, so at elevated temperatures with high pressure, it can be combined. So ultimately, the beneficial effects are it retains the flavor, and enzymatically and microbiologically, the safer product you can obtain, and it will obviously retain the nutrients. That is actually importance or maybe the basic crux of high pressure processing and its advantage. Now, if you look at how actually it is applied in an enclosed chamber, if you keep your food sample in a pre-packed condition and apply the pressure either directly or indirectly. In case of direct pressure application, the piston kind of structure is there, so that will be compressing the liquid water which is surrounding your food sample. So this way you can actually get the product compressed, and of course this hydrostatic pressure will not deshape or it will not crush the product, and in turn some volume change up to 15% it will be taken, and that will be useful for your inactivation of the microbes. Subsequently, when you release the pressure, the product and along with its packaging material will be regaining its shape. So that means the salient features are it will be processed under packaged condition. That means subsequent packaging is not required in case of batch type of processes, and it renders the food shelf stable due to the inactivation of the enzymes, which I mentioned, and of course the destruction of microorganisms. However, sometimes the pressure resistant microbes or maybe enzymes, they may not be inactivated completely. In that case, you may have to augment with the temperature. So for that matter, any other kind of secondary process can be augmented with this, so that you can efficiently tackle the enzymes as well as the microbes. For example, spores are the most resistant organisms. Only pressure in a moderate level up to 600 megapascal or 700 megapascal, this cannot be inactivated completely. So where you should go for the pressure which is closer to 1000 megapascal, this is actually quite difficult, or otherwise a moderate pressure of 600 to 700 megapascal combined with some temperature component. So maybe the temperature augmentation is essential when you are having barrier-resistant microbes or maybe enzymes. Now, moving further, what are the advantages of this high pressure processing? So this can be used to process both liquid and solid products in flexible containers, and it has the potential for treating even low acid foods. But in this case, you may have to augment with some secondary processes. There may be some kind of modification in the food commodity in terms of lowering the pH or maybe other kind of solute switch addition. Now, the treatment of foods under HPP is uniform, as I already mentioned, and which is nearly instantaneous throughout the product. This is actually one of the major advantages compared to your thermal processes. It kills the bacteria and almost eliminates heat damage and the use of chemical preservatives. So this is again another very important thing. And of course, to compare to your thermal processes or maybe conventional processes, use of chemical preservatives or maybe additives can be completely eliminated. That means the product which is processed, although it may not have very long shelf life, unlike your thermal processed products, but it is additive free. So that is another very important thing, and overall it will be improving the quality of the products. Now, high pressure processing also can create ingredient with novel functional properties in terms of its water retention capacity, or maybe in terms of micropores creation, or maybe in terms of its structural or maybe textural modifications. So this will be creating some kind of novel functional ingredients, and by this way we can have a wide marketability for even similar kind of product with a as a functional ingredient also. This will be getting on a parallel market. Now, if you're moving further, what are the factors affecting in the HPP process? The pH of the commodity, the water activity, and food composition as far as the food product is concerned. Similarly, the type of food material, whether it is a solid food material or maybe liquid food material or maybe semi-solid kind of like slurry, etc. Then enzymes, what type of enzyme which is present in that one, and some of the enzymes might be most barrier resistant. Some of the enzymes, although these are not in general resistant, but in presence of sugar, which is most common in case of food juices, so might behave in a different way. So depending upon the composition as well as what type of enzyme. Similarly, microorganisms. So there is a specific trend, the sensitivity or maybe resistance of individual microorganism. However, they also behave in a different way when you are having a compositional differences are there. So like in presence of sugar, again then they behave in a different way. So we can see these things a little later. Now coming to the packaging material, as I hinted, so this requires a flexible packaging material. Most commonly, any kind of polymeric films are which is used. Simple polyethylene can be used, but the water penetration might be a problem. But most commonly we use EVOH, ethyl vinyl alcohol, or maybe PVOH, polyvinyl alcohol. These are the films which are commonly used. And in addition, one can use retard pouches, which are of course available for thermal processing. The same kind of retard pouches can be used, particularly when you are going for higher temperatures in combination with the high pressure. And alternatively, liquid foods can be filled into PET bottles also with appropriate sealing possibility. Now, any doubt? Okay, so when you look at high pressure processing as an experimental process, so these are the process parameters one must consider to vary. The pressure, you can vary anywhere between 50 megapascals to 900 megapascal. However, it depends upon the system capability. So the system which we are having can hold up to 900 megapascal, but there are some systems which can work up to only 600 megapascal. So depending upon the pressure range of the individual equipment, this can be varied. Similarly, time to achieve treatment pressure. I want to reach the 600 megapascals in 2 minutes or maybe 3 minutes. So that's one possibility. But in certain cases, the intensifiers might be provided with a lower capacity or maybe only one number. In that case, it may take a little longer time. So you cannot go very fast. So the rapid pressurization or maybe rapid decompression also has an influence. That's why the time to achieve treatment pressure is one of the parameters. Similarly, product pH. In fact, pH gives a protective effect. Rather, actually, when lower pH is there, so obviously the microorganisms can be inactivated at a lower pressure or maybe lower processing conditions. Similarly, the product water activity, very low water activity will not be effective in terms of high pressure efficiency. So only when you are having liquid foods with higher water activity, those will reveal better process efficiency. But in terms of the storability or maybe the process conditions required, a moderate pH water activity, maybe up to 0.5 or maybe 0.6, they will give the required stability at a reasonable pressures. Similarly, the temperature of the food, maybe the initial temperature of the food, or maybe the processing temperature of the food. Similarly, the product composition, this of course influences typically when you are having higher amount of lipid or maybe protein, they will be raising the internal temperature of the product itself because of the heat of compression. So that means higher amount of lipid, that means the product temperature will be raising at the rate of 6 megapascal for every 100 megapascal pressure. Sorry, 6 degrees centigrade for every 100 megapascal pressure, right? Similarly, the end temperature or maybe the final temperature of the product during your process, that depends upon your product initial temperature also. And the decompression time, as I mentioned, the rapidness of the decompression, that determines your decompression time. Similarly, the product process temperature. Sometimes we may be augmenting along with the pressure with some temperature, maybe it may be 45 degrees centigrade or 50 degrees centigrade. You can go at the most without any detrimental effect up to 60 degrees centigrade, beyond which you have to be very careful. However, when you are applying temperature, how does it qualify as a non-thermal? Still, it is called as a non-thermal because your major parameter which is influencing is the pressure. So, augmenting the temperature will have some negative influence, but it's not very detrimental unlike your thermal processing, because here the process time is anywhere between 2 minutes to 10 minutes maximum. But in case of thermal processing, it is heated for a long time, even up to 40-45 minutes. So that's why thermal abusing is very common in case of thermal processing. But in this case, since you are heating only for a shorter period of 5 to 10 minutes, so the temperature effect will not be so much. Moreover, actually, we are restricting the temperature within 45 to 60 degrees centigrade in most cases when you are really required to augment the temperature. And similarly, packaging material integrity, the material which you are choosing, it must be suitable for high pressure applications because of its salability and the water penetration possibilities, right? And of course, another important thing is actually concurrent processing aids. Are you combining with any alternative processes? Maybe temperature augmentation is one. Similarly, you can have the PF, pulse electric field also you can combine with, ultrasound also you can combine with, pulse light also you can combine with. Sometimes so the having any kind of additives or maybe preservatives also will influence the process. Now moving further, the sensitivity of microorganisms, if you see for high pressure treatment, the yeast and mold, it is the least resistant organism, and whereas bacterial spores are actually most resistant. The highest resistance is offered by bacterial spores. In between, the gram-negative is less sensitive, sorry, high sensitive. Gram-positive is followed by more resistant, and among the gram-positive, rod-shaped is actually low resistance or maybe more sensitive, and gram-positive cockeye-shaped basically it will be having higher resistance. So this way, the resistance path follows. However, there may be some abnormalities. For example, if you are having high sugar or maybe higher acidity, in those cases, yeast and mold will be giving a more resistance compared to your gram-negative. So those are actually some kind of extreme cases, but commonly this particular path of resistance it will be followed. Am I clear to you so far? Guys, am I clear to you so far?
Yes, sir.
After 12. So now, how this high pressure affects the food composition? So you may be having different components or maybe different unwanted material which have to be eliminated. For example, microbes, they will be inactivated by cell rupture or maybe cell disintegration, as I mentioned. Similarly, starch, when it is exposed in presence of water, the starch gets gelatinized as well as swelling will occur. So this way, even you can use as a alternative for thermal gelatination. And similarly, the tissue. So most of the food products are actually combination of several tissues, which may be soft tissue or maybe hard tissue. The tissue get disintegrated. So under microscopic observation, so this kind of disintegration one can observe. Similarly, the lipids actually they get transition to other forms, and the proteins they get unfolded. However, this unfolding it may get refolded depending upon the pressure level. At lower pressure, below 200 megapascal, so it may get refolded over a period of time. But if it is beyond 200 megapascal, generally this unfolding remains, and it will be influencing your enzyme inactivation, maybe other kind of changes which happens commonly in proteins. Now, if you see a typical high pressure processing cycle, as I mentioned, the commodity is pre-packed, and the pre-packed commodity is put into a vessel, which is like a cylindrical vessel, and there are actually a bottom cap and top cap. So bottom cap is mostly fixed. So the top cap is removable. You keep your sample inside and fix the top cap. Then you can actually fill the water with a low pressure oil pump at the bottom, which is sealed. Once the entire vessel is filled, then the high pressure pump gets into action, and that will keep on pumping the liquid further so that inside the required pressure is created. So when it is achieving the desired pressure, let us say maybe 400 megapascal or maybe 600 megapascal, then the pump gets stops. Then it is held for some time. That's what it's called holding time here. And in case of thermal processing, it is called processing time. So this holding time is also termed as dwell time also in case of high pressure processing. Let us say the process treatment is requiring about 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, the cycle is complete. You will be releasing the pressure, the water will be going out, and you remove the top cap and take out the sample. So this way, the food is packaged in the flexible packaging material and placed in the vessel. First step. Then after putting the sample inside, the sealing of the vessel and water is pumped into it. So that is the second step. Pressure is transmitted uniformly when it's completely filled, and of course the intended pressure is created. Then the holding time is anywhere between 30 seconds to 30 minutes, depending upon the desired change. What is actually your target? Whether you are intending to look at what kind of influence is there on the process composition or maybe process parameters, product parameters, or otherwise you are intending to inactivate the microbes. You are intending to inactivate the most resistant enzyme and bacteria, or you are intending to understand I'm sorry, somebody's mic is on. Can you please put it off? Huh? Am I clear? So this time actually 30 seconds to 30 minutes, which is actually possible time, but most commonly, most of the industrial processes, it remains less than 10 minutes. Now, finally, when the pressure cycle is over, you will depressurize the vessel, and the cycle is complete. You can, of course, take out the sample and for further packaging. So this is the same thing, of course, explanation. Now coming to the packaging. So plastic films are generally amenable for HPP, as I mentioned in the beginning, which may not be generally suitable for high temperature processing. But however, here also there are certain restrictions as far as the permeability of the film is concerned. So however, metal cans and glass containers are not suitable for process because it cannot give any kind of flexibility. A minimum, a 15% volume change is actually desirable for getting intended effect of high pressure processing. Now, packaging material for HPP treatment should be preferably oxygen impermeable to avoid the adverse interactions between the food components. Because if you are having more oxygen, which is even penetrating due to the pressure, so oxidation related changes will be happening. So this oxidation of unsaturated lipids, these kind of problems will be there under the treatment conditions. To avoid that one, to the possible extent, it should be oxygen impermeable, number one. Number two, if headspace contains some amount of oxygen, it's better to remove always. That means if it is a semi-solid or maybe solid product, we can go for vacuum packaging. And if it is a liquid product, at least remove the headspace oxygen to the maximum permissible situation. But there is a need for development of improved packaging materials that prevent the oxygen permeability and light exposure for keeping the fresh color and flavor of the HPP products, including the fishery products. Because of fishery products, they undergo most lipid oxidation kind of issues. Other food juices, etc., may not be having so much of oxidation related changes. Now, specific packaging and equipment requirements for the pressure assisted freezing and thawing have been also identified in the recent past, right? Now, moving further, so this is actually a kind of indication that different organisms, they behave in a different way. Of course, we have already seen the resistance of microorganisms. However, among the E. coli and monosargens, you can see in one case, the monosargens, they are actually a maximum log cycle reduction was there at 400 megapascal. For the same pressure, if you see the E. coli, so it is actually having a lower log reduction. So this indicates, so you will be having differences in terms of resistance to different organisms. That means they behave in a different way under the same pressure conditions, right? And of course, the shelf life, as far as the shelf life is concerned, most HPP products are not shelf stable, unlike your thermal processed ones. You require a chilled storage condition, 2 to 5 degrees centigrade in all the cases. But however, when you go for the pressure assisted thermal processing or maybe thermal assisted high pressure processing, in those cases, possibly you can improve the shelf life, and these could be made shelf stable. So the efforts are being made to make into a shelf stable HP treated products also. Now, if you look at the high pressure effect of high pressure processing on food, what different things happens in the food properties? The denaturation of the protein is the most common in the protein based products. Similarly, the lipids, they get solidified or maybe crystalline. Similarly, physicochemical properties of water are modified to a certain extent. Macromolecular transconformation, which is the major reason for any kind of structural changes. Then the chemical reactions might be enhanced in certain cases. Changes in the melting point because of the pressure which is being applied. So there is a phase transition which occurs that causes the changes in the melting point. And HP does not affect the covalent bonds, which we have already seen. Whereas other bonds like hydrogen bonds or maybe hydrophobic interactions, they will be influenced by it. And the nutritional quality, it gets I cannot say it's like nothing will be changing, but the changes are actually quite a minimum. Maybe in subsequent slides you can see in certain cases it was very least, in certain cases nil also. But the minimum changes are expected in case of nutrition quality. That is one of the most advantageous parameter or maybe phenomenon. Now, color and texture can be affected to certain extent depending upon its composition. Let me tell, in case of fruit juices or maybe in case of vegetables, the color changes are actually least. But in case of protein-based products, particularly the meat or maybe fishery product, aquatic products, so the color changes are actually quite evident, right? Similarly, the textural changes also, this depends upon the gelation possibilities or maybe the denaturation possibilities. So the product which get denatured, they will be having a clear texture changes. The one which doesn't. For example, fruit pulp, etc., the textural changes are actually least. But in case of again the protein-based products or maybe you can say meat-based products, the textural changes are actually quite evident. Now, these are actually some of the products which are available commercially in Japanese and European markets as of now. So, in Indian scenario, commercially nobody is producing any high pressure processed products, but most of the developments are at the research level only. But European markets and Japanese markets are flooded with a lot of products like jam, jelly, juices, salad dressings, fish and meat products. So most of the European markets are actually having the predominant meat and fish-based products. But the Japanese markets are mostly the fruits and vegetable-based products like jam, jelly, etc. Similarly, the rice cakes are available, yogurt, etc. also is available. So we will see some of the possibilities of dairy-based products subsequently. Now, if you look at the effect of color, just we discussed it some time back. For example, in the first case, the salami, before and after the HPP treatment, in spite of the meat tissue here, it is actually the disintegrated meat, number one. Number two, the composition is combined with the other ingredients. So that's why actually there's a protective effect. The color changes are not very predominant. But the salmon meat slice, if you see, so this is actually before treatment, this is after treatment. That means there's an evident color change. This is because of the protein denaturation and which is happening within the product. Similarly, the milk. So the color tints are not quite visible. Similarly, it's strawberry. The color changes are not very much. Although there is a deepness in the color, but the changes are not very much high. Similarly, cheese before and after, there's not much difference. Again, you can see here the chicken, beef, or maybe pork. Again, being a meat slice, it is having a clear-cut color. There is a faded color, or there is a lightness in the color, which is happening due to the protein denaturation, which occurs commonly, right? Similarly, milk before and after, you can see here. So this way, the color changes are actually product specific. Now, if you see the packaging considerations, of course, we have already understood. So it requires a flexible container or maybe flexible packaging, particularly in case of batch mode. Flexible pouches are make the best use of the volume treatment chamber. Major advantage is scalability. You can go for a larger volume filling or maybe larger volume treatment. Actually, it can increase the efficiency of the bulk packs, and headspace air and potential delamination at higher pressure and temperature are the major issues. So you should remove this headspace air to the possible extent. In most cases, it is possible when it is a solid or maybe semi-solid. But in case of liquid filled products, the removal of headspace air to a complete extent is difficult. Similarly, if the packaging material chosen is not appropriate at higher temperature and pressure, there may be a possibility of delamination. In turn, the package might be failing. Now, if you look at several applications of high pressure processing, so the tempering of chocolate is one of the applications. Similarly, gelatinization of starches, blanching of vegetables. Sometimes you may be wondering, blanching is a very simple treatment. Why actually we are using it for blanching? But the conventional blanching, it has a lot of effluents which is going out, number one. Number two, lot of nutrients, water soluble nutrients particularly will be lost along with the water. And so the energy requirements also quite high. But in this case, without having any kind of waste solids going out, without having any kind of water soluble minerals or maybe vitamins going out, we can complete the blanching operation, which will be having the similar effect. Similarly, the tenderization of meat. All of you know tenderization of meat in conventional process, it takes a couple of days. But using high pressure processing without heat, so this can be completed in a couple of minutes. Do you have any clarification? Somebody is. Similarly, coagulation and texturization of fish and other kind of meat minces is another very potential application. But because the meat mince actually it can get coagulated or maybe it can get gelled very easily. The soft gel can be prepared compared to thermal processing. So the instant freezing and thawing is another potential application, although not much work has been done, but it is quite rapid. So you know the freezing takes quite a long time, maybe a couple of hours. But with the pressure augmentation, it will be instantaneous or maybe very rapid in a couple of minutes. Within 42 or 45 minutes, solidification or maybe freezing can be done. Similarly, when you are going for thawing also, without any kind of a trip loss, the thawing can be done in very less time, like even couple of seconds to few minutes. Now, increased water absorption rate and reduced cooking time for the beans. Generally, beans actually is having very hard structure, so the soaking requires overnight almost for a complete water absorption. But when you go for HP augmentation, so this can be done in a couple of minutes. At the same time, the cooking time can be reduced using high pressure processing. Similarly, you have pre-cooked rice preparation, which is suitable for microwave reheating, and the sterilization is of course possible. So far, whatever the applications which are quite prominent and have been developed are based on the pasteurization. But the sterilization also is possible with the new technology development, that's a pressure-assisted thermal processing, wherein pressure you are applying to the tune of about 400 to 600 megapascal, and the temperature as you require. If it is for sterilization, it will be up to 121 degrees centigrade also. However, again, let me tell you, the time requirement for the process is quite low. Within actually 5 to 10 minutes, you can complete the sterilization process. Thus, the thermal abusing will be quite minimal. Now, moving further, there are several other applications like high pressure freezing application, high pressure thawing, which of course I already mentioned, high pressure non-frozen storage. So you require actually, once you do this particular process, it can be stored under non-frozen condition also. Now, not everything is very positive or maybe gloom. You have some issues related to high pressure processing. First of all, it is quite expensive compared to your traditional processing. Expensive in the sense, let me tell very clearly and categorically, the equipment cost is high, but not the processing cost. And since cost is high, obviously the overhead cost also it gets included there. So that's why the process cost looks like high, but when the technology gets matured, so possibly this can be brought down. Similarly, further research on the effects of HPP and consumer perception is necessary for proper control. So the legislation in Indian scenario is not yet actually established for the high pressure processor products. Like FSSAI guidelines are not there for HPP because it's not very common process for us. And with respect to the food safety particularly, similarly the food composition and its interaction with the packaging, this has to be well established for most commodities. It has not been done only for few commodities that too overseas people have researched. Now looking at the limitations apart from those difficulties, HPP cannot yet to be used to make shelf-stable versions of low-acid products such as vegetables, milk, or maybe soup because of inability of this process to destroy the spores. Because as I told, the standalone HPP cannot be able to destroy the spores, but you need temperature augmentation to combat the spores. Similarly, the food must contain water, not having any kind of internal pockets. If you are having water, that gives a kind of flexibility to the product, number one. Number two, the water activity will be higher, so the process will be more efficient. But the internal air pockets presence will be again detrimental, because if it is having internal air pockets, like in case of strawberry, so a lot of internal air pockets will be there. Similarly, capsicum, a lot of air is embedded there. So the moment it gets compressed, it may not be able to regain the shape, so they will be crushed. So there is one of the difficulty for the air entrapped commodities. So dry solids do not have sufficient moisture to make HPP effective for microbial destruction. For example, a semi-solid food, or maybe what is that called? The intermediate foods, or maybe even a complete dried food like dried vegetables or maybe dried spices, etc. The HPP cannot be applied there. Okay, so some flexibility in the food material with the presence of water is essential. Am I clear to you so far? Am I clear to you so far?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, moving further, how actually we can overcome these limitations? We can combine the HPP with the other methods. As I already mentioned, you can combine with PEF, you can combine with acidification, you can combine with the alternative heating and cooling, you can combine with the light pulses, you can combine with CO2, you can combine with ultrasound like this. By this way, the benefits are, it reduces the severity of other processes. Like actually, instead of going for a longer treatment time, so you can have a milder treatment of two individual processes. So that way, you can have a reduced processing time overall also, and reduces the processing cost also, because the HPP kind of non-thermal technology is quite expensive. So when it is combined with, so the process cost also can be limited. So you can reduce the overall processing cost, right? Now, so this actually I would like to skip it. I will come to that later on. So now, if you look at the components of high pressure processing, so there are four major components: the pressure vessel and its closure, the temperature control device, because whenever you are actually going for pressure, so there is some temperature rise, which will be because of the heat of compression, which I already mentioned. So this temperature need to be controlled, or otherwise, if you want to intentionally increase the temperature, or if you want to cool the process temperature, then actually you require a temperature control device. And apart from that, you may require pressure control also, and you require a pressure generation system, because how the hydrostatic pressure is created with the help of some pumps and some intensifiers. That's why the pressure generation system is also important. And last but not least, the material handling system, because the material, in case of small laboratory systems, handling is not a problem, but in case of commercial systems, the handling the product, like actually pushing in or maybe taking out the sample, will be difficult. So you require some kind of conveyor systems and loading and unloading provisions. So most pressure vessels, one more important thing is, among all these components, pressure vessel is considered to be the most important, and it's the heart of the system. So that's why it is quite important. And most pressure vessels are prepared from high tensile steel alloy monoblocks. Please remember this: high tensile steel alloy monoblocks. And for very high pressure, more than 400 megapascal, generally the pre-stressed multi-layer or maybe wire wound system, which is at the bottom. So there's a pre-stressed vessel is there all around the wire is actually wound. This is a steel wire, of course, which is winded around so that it is held firmly. When you are actually increasing the pressure, so in spite of little bulging, it will be within the normal shape only. But in case of monoblock, when the pressure is applied, it will be bulging slightly. You can see the upper picture, so there's a slight bulging. So again, the life of the pressure vessel is a few lakhs of cycles. It's not actually lifetime, it is a few lakhs of cycles. And again, that depends upon the severity of the treatment. If you are going for the maximum pressure cycles, all cycles, then again, no, the number of cycles also may be reduced. But with an average pressure, so it will be having 1 lakh to 3 lakhs, depending upon the system capability and system design, right? And typically it contains, there is a bottom vessel plug, there is a top vessel plug, and there is a wire wound vessel, which is like a cylindrical system, and the bottom cap and top cap, which are called plugs, these are actually closed, and it is actually held firmly in between a yoke, which is again a monoblock type of metallic system, or otherwise this is actually made of number of plates added together, and of course built into a wire wound system again. So there is actually different type of systems are available, right? Now, as far as the pressure generation is concerned, we have two different types of pressure generation: direct compression or maybe indirect compression. The third category, which is not common in case of food products, is heating of the pressure medium, which is common again in the gaseous products. So the indirect compression uses a high pressure intensifier like the blue colored one. So there is this is called intensifier, the blue colored one. The liquid is actually passing through a narrow tube or maybe pressure line, and it is pushed into the pressure vessel. So the commodity, which is red in color, will be compressed with the liquid medium. So this is actually the indirect compression system using a high pressure intensifier, and this intensifier is connected to a pump. All right. Whereas the direct compression is with the help of a direct piston. In case of direct piston, the pressure application is actually quite rapid or maybe faster, but the control is not very much. But in case of indirect one, so it is actually slow, but you can precisely control the pressure. So that's the major advantage with the indirect. And most of the current systems are actually with the indirect compression only. The older systems contain the direct compression, right? Now, looking at the effects of pressurization, so you can very clearly see the permeabilization of cell membrane. So any pressure beyond 100 megapascal, and inactivation of microbes is possible 400 megapascal onwards. Pasteurization effects are there 500 to 600 megapascal at ambient temperature of 1 to 10 minutes, and inactivation of enzymes is possible beyond 700 megapascal, and the sterilization is between 700 to 800 megapascal with a temperature of 70 to 90 degrees centigrade, and the maximum temperature is between 110 to 120, which is actually the combining the pressure with the thermal processing basically. So the time you can see it's 5 minutes. And when you are having most barrier resistant spores or maybe resistant enzymes, in that case you may be going up to 1000 megapascal and even beyond also. So this is actually the effect of pressure. Now, of course, if you look at the equipment, I don't want to get into much of the details on the equipment. So Japanese are the lead manufacturers of high pressure vessels. The companies like Mitsubishi, Kobe Steel, Nippon, these are the companies who are manufacturing the high pressure vessels. And of course, so some of the European companies are also there. Among them actually, who are quite known is actually your, you can say, sorry, I'm missing the name, NC Hyperbaric, I'm sorry. NC Hyperbaric actually well known in the European, which is basically from Spain. And similarly, Engineered Pressure Systems is another one. ABB Autoclave Systems is another one. And Stansted is from UK, of course. And ABB Technologies and Autoclave Engineers, these are from USA. Okay. Now, if you look at so these are actually a handful of people, only 10 to 12 number of manufacturers are there all over the world. And some manufacture the batch type of systems in the laboratory model, and some manufacture the industrial systems, of course, not very large. You can see the subsequent slide. So the largest volume which is available is up to 9,000 liters. But the limitation is there with the pressure. So it cannot go beyond working pressure of 100 megapascal. Might have been designed for more than that, but working pressure is up to maximum 100 megapascal. But when you're looking for very high pressure to the tune of 1400, that's possible, but the volume goes down. So only 35 ml to 3.5 liter, this is available as a standard system. But quite commonly between 690 or maybe 900 megapascal, these are actually quite a large number of systems are there, anywhere between 2 liters to 37 liters. So as the volume increases, the limitation is with the maximum pressure. That one must understand. So this is one of the major engineering challenge. Secondly, some of the other challenges like fabrication of pressure vessels to handle large volumes of food, and that can withstand such huge pressures. That's one of the major problem. And the pressure vessel should have a short cycle. So it's not like you cannot hold it for a longer time. It should be very short cycle. That means loading, unloading, and holding time together. That's called cycle time. So this should be finished within 20 minutes. And that is actually one of the limitation for many of the systems. And it should be easy to clean, and it should be easy to safe to operate, because of such a huge pressure, which is like a bomb basically. So if you are not designing properly, if it's not safe to operate, it may even collapse sometime and it may blast. So that's why it must be safe to operate, and the process control must be quite accurate. Maybe the temperature, pressure, and maybe further matter any other monitoring systems, those must be very precise. Okay. So moving further, actually we are having batch system and semi-continuous system, which are actually quite common. And as far as the configurations are concerned, hybrid vessels may operate in vertical, horizontal, and tilting mode. So the one which I have shown in the earlier cases, that is actually vertical systems. These are actually vertical systems, but the commercial systems are mostly horizontal systems. And there is another one which is a tilting mode. So this is actually, while it is in operation, it will be in vertical mode. For the loading purpose, it can be tilted to certain angle so that the product sample can be loaded very conveniently. So this way, these three different modes are generally available. Okay, and this is actually a kind of a semi-continuous system where it's not actually true semi-continuous. So there are three different. So there are actually three different vessels are there. In each vessel, at a particular time, one particular operation is going to happen. For example, the first vessel is getting feeded with the material, maybe liquid food. The second vessel, after filling, this compression is happening with the help of a what I can say press. And the third one, after compression is over, it is getting released. The liquid is actually going out as a process liquid. That means at any moment, some liquid is going into one of the vessels, some liquid under compression, and some liquid is actually going out as a process liquid. So that way, the process makes a kind of semi-continuous, but truly individual vessel is not doing that kind of semi-continuous operation, right? Is that clear to you? Is that clear to you? And of course, it is mostly
Yes,
done with the mimicking of
Yes,
this
sir, clear.
wall. Yeah, the
Yes,
white
sir.
wall, it indicates it's open. The black wall, it indicates it's closed. Since you are actually filling the liquid, so this particular valve is open, and the other side is all are actually blocked. Similarly, under compression, all the valves must be blocked. Only the press will be in downward position. Similarly, when it is going out, or maybe the pressure is released, so this releasing valve is actually open. Rest all actually these are closed. This way, with mimicking of walls, one can maintain that semi-continuous process. Now, this is actually the system which we are having in our lab. So maybe in the second part of today's class, I will show a small video at a later stage. Okay. 1 minute. So, 5 minutes last. Oh, okay. Then notice okay. So this is actually the PLC module, or maybe which is called console, and this is your pressure vessel, which is of 2-liter system what we are having with us, and the cavity which you are seeing here, that is where actually you will load the sample, and this yoke will be coming under standing on this cavity, and so that actually the top cap can be closed with this one, right? Similarly, this is your pressure module, or which is also called a press module, which contains all your pumps. So in a horizontal system, which you can see here, the unprocessed batch is getting into this one. The side end plugs are closed. Then after that, the vessel is pre-filled with liquid with through this water tank, and it is getting compressed. And after compression is over, the step is called pressurizing. Then the pressure is released and the product is unloaded. So the tray will be going out. So this way one can complete. But in our system, which we are filling vertically, and of course we are taking out manually, right? So as far as the process variables are concerned, although I have mentioned several process variables in the previous slide, So these are the three variables which commonly we use in the research: the pressure level, the dwell time, that is holding time, and the process temperature. So apart from that, of course, one can take the compression and decompression rates, maybe some kind of temperature augmentation, etc. All those things can be taken, but those are actually additional. Now, so this is the total system, how it looks. So this is the console, which is actually which is a kind of controlling panel basically. This is our vessel module, and the other one actually, this is the press module where actually all the pumps are there. Okay. Now, if you see the cut section, it looks like this. So this is the sample holder. We can take monitoring of all the temperature and the pressure through a data logger, and this can be stored in the computer. And the HP medium is released to into the vessel through some kind of pumping systems. And you can even, one more advantage is there. So there will be a kind of provision for the circulation of water around the vessel. So that's called, there is a kind of jacketing system is there. So using a water bath heating system, or maybe some kind of chilling or maybe heating module, we can circulate the hot water or maybe cold water around this vessel. So that means the sample which is inside can be maintained at a particular temperature, can be heated to a particular temperature, can be cooled down to a particular temperature, so that the intended process will be obtained. Okay. Now, when you are doing the process, so the pressure profile is like this. It is actually initial pressure PS. It is increased to a pressure called P1, which is the desirable pressure. And there will be slight adjustment and drop of the pressure, which is called P2. This drop of the pressure is not very much, to the tune of about 5 megapascal out of 600 or maybe 800 megapascal. And finally, when you release the pressure, it comes to the normal. Now, let us say TS is your room temperature. And during your pressurization cycle, the temperature rises to TM. So this rise in the temperature is called heat of compression. Now, here also the temperature will be adjusted during your holding period, because some temperature might be dissipating to the surroundings. That's why there's a temperature fall between TM and T2. And now this T2 will be falling down to TF. That's your final temperature during your decompression. And surprisingly, you are starting at TS, but you are ending with TF, which is actually much lower than TS. So this lower temperature is because of the rapid decompression, which gives a kind of cooling effect. So that means if you are expecting a kind of temperature drop to close to, let's say, 4 degrees centigrade, the water may get solidified. So that's why you should not use water in that case as a compression medium. You should use a mixture of alcohol and water. So like actually glycol mixture we use in our case, right? Similarly, if you are intending to use the low temperature or maybe below ambient condition applications, commonly it is what you can say isopropanol. So 2-propyl alcohol or maybe isopropanol is most commonly used as a liquid medium for the compression purpose. And if you are using high temperature applications above ambient temperature, generally the mixture of glycol and water is used, or otherwise one can use even some lipid into the medium, so that the temperature range will be rapid. As I mentioned, the water can give a heat of compression to the tune of 2 to 3 degrees centigrade. In case of lipid, it can give 6.6 to 9.5 degrees centigrade. That means if you are raising the temperature by 500 megapascal, so there is a 45 degrees temperature raise automatically without outside intervention. So that's the advantage when you are going for higher temperature applications. Better to use a lipid medium as a decompression medium. Now the dwell time is nothing but this holding time is called dwell time, and this time which is required to raise the pressure from PS to P1, that's called come up time, which is also called CUT. Come up time is the time required to increase the pressure from ambient condition to desired pressure of P1. Right. Similarly, this T2 to TF, so this is the decompression time. So all these 3 parameters are quite important. Sometimes so the come up time also influences your microbial inactivation. Similarly, the decompression, rapid decompression also has some influence on the product quality. So that's why you have to consider all the 3 parameters like come up time, holding, as well as decompression. Am I clear to you so far? I think I'm going a little deeper, but are you clear?
Yes, sir, clear.
Yeah. But of course, in a real-time pressure cycle, so this is the typical pressure cycle. So the pressure is rising to this one, the temperature is rising to little higher level, and slightly dropping to little lower level because of the adjustment, and the pressure is held up to, let us say, 20 minutes in this particular case, or maybe about 18 minutes. Then when the pressure is dropped, so then the temperature also drops, below your initial temperature or maybe below your ambient condition, right? Now, these are actually the other systems which are available with a different capacity. This is a 5.5 liter system from Stansted Fluid Power. Similarly, this is a 55 liter system which is vertical, and this is the system which is an example of horizontal system, mostly used for the commercial applications. So in this case, there is a crate which is filled with the sample. You can see the next one. The crates are filled with the sample which is to be treated. This crate over a conveyor belt is pushed into the vessel, and both end caps are actually closed, and the pressure is raised. And finally, when the treatment is over, after some time, the pressure is released and the tray will be coming out as a treated one. So the pressure is transmitted uniformly, instantaneously throughout the product to disrupt the microbial biochemistry and of the bacteria. Finally, you are actually able to inactivate those poisonous microorganisms. The product is now safe to pack off, right? Now, one important thing which is, of course, mostly people look at is actually cost of high pressure processing. It is having a brand, you can say, bad name. So it is a very high cost process. So you must understand that one, the cost of high pressure processing, it depends upon the combination of pressure holding time, and temperature at which the product is processed. Inherently, the equipment cost is quite high. So a 2 liter system will cost about 1.5 to 2 crores around. But the commercial systems are not proportionally higher. Let us say 10 liter system if you are going for, so this will be costing about nearly 5 crores. Maybe 300 liter system you can get in 10 crores. So when you go for higher volume, the cost will be lower. However, the operating cost, it depends upon these parameters. So these variables must be carefully selected so that the operating cost also it will be minimum. However, let me confess from our experience, the cost of heating to 105, 21 degrees centigrade or maybe 100 degrees centigrade is much higher compared to a pressure rise of 500 megapascal in terms of energy cost. Only thing, the parameter which is adding the higher cost is its equipment cost and its overhead. Otherwise, the energy costs are much lower and comparable. And of course, this can be, of course, compensated with the cost realization. So because the product value realization will be much better in case of HPP products because of the good quality or maybe you can say improved quality. So the cost per unit production is lower for a single large production unit compared to several small units in parallel. So instead of going for a 50 liter system several, we can go for a 300 liter, one large volume, so that the cost will be lower. So this cost saving is possible because the capital cost of the manufacturing of a large unit is much smaller than your several small units. This of course is true in other cases also, other equipment also. Now, if you look at how high pressure can preserve the foods, I'll take actually 2-3 minutes more so that I can finish this part and stop it. Is it okay?
Sir, is there Indian supplier for HPP?
As of now, no.
Okay, sir.
Some Indian suppliers also, they are actually importing from other countries. They are actually supplying as their own product. That's like some Chinese products are available. So one company from Chennai, KK Life Sciences, they are actually supplying. Recently, a person from Gujarat, so he has quoted, but I'm not very sure. I have not seen the system, so that's why I cannot really tell this is whether a HPP system or maybe it's a HP, what I can say, homogenizer. So HP homogenizers are being manufactured by some Gujarati companies. I'm not very sure. That's why until I see and believe, I cannot really confirm you, right? As of now, all the systems are imported systems only, either from UK, either from China, or maybe Spain, etc. Now, how high pressure can preserve the foods? The protocol is similar to high temperature. The death of microorganisms is due to the permeabilization of the cell membranes. That is actually first point of discussion. And the changes are reversible at lower pressure, which I mentioned, less than 200 megapascal, these might be reversible, but it is irreversible at higher pressures, more than 200 megapascals. Reduction of enzymes activity ensures high quality and shelf stable products. But however, in all the cases, 100% inactivation of the enzyme is not possible. You may get a 40 to 70% depending upon the commodity. So if you want to have beyond this, you must have some kind of augmentation of the temperature. Now only non-covalent bonds are affected. So though organoleptic properties are unaltered and covalent bonds are actually intact, combination methods for baroresistive microorganisms, as I already mentioned, you require some combination of temperature or maybe any other method to combat with the baroresistive microorganisms like bacterial spores or even some of the enzymes also they are actually baro-resistant. So beyond 70, which are not inactivated, means there are some kind of isogens which are present in the enzyme. So that will be causing the resistance, which is not possible to inactivate within that limited pressure. So you may have to go for very high pressure in combination with some temperature. Now effects on organoleptic and sensory characteristics are little, if any. And in most cases, people report, so it is the same as the freshly extracted or maybe freshly prepared. But there might be some changes in the flavor note, some changes in the taste, some changes in the mouthfeel, etc. But these are actually sometimes unrecognizable, right? Only when you measure with the instrumentation, then only you can find those changes exactly, right? So these are actually some of the HPP food products. So the food juices of several variants are there from the Japanese markets. Similarly, some kind of sauces are available. And again, these are the pulps, and coconut water is available. These are actually, again, what you can say, the spice coated shrimp and other kind of fish products. Okay. So HPP is a great option for keeping fresh flavor of juices and smoothies. So original taste of color, taste and color of the food, allowing the creation of highest quality premium range products. And it was actually recorded or maybe reported, normal thermal processed products, if it is sold for, let us say, $1, the HPP products can be sold between 2 to 2.5 times higher. So that means you can have a product cost realization in spite of the higher cost. So these are considered like premium range products because there is no additive, there is no preservative. Although shelf life is actually limited to the tune of about 90 days to 120 days only, that too under the chilled condition, but still these are considered premium because the quality is actually superior and close to the fresh one. The real taste of the freshly squeezed juice can be realized. And HPP products like pomegranate, apple, carrot, broccoli, beetroot, wet salads, purees, sauces, smoothies, chunks, slices, etc. These are actually available in the markets. Development of natural, preservation-free, and functional products by high pressure is actually very much available, or maybe which are actually under anvil. HPP allows development of healthier food, which is rich in vitamins, antioxidants, bringing a higher level of functionality to the new products. One important thing, since you are not losing the quality in terms of vitamins or maybe antioxidants, so intentionally also we can add the antioxidants or maybe vitamins wherever it is required, because in the process treatment you are not losing them much. But otherwise, in case of thermal processing, particularly the ascorbic acid kind of antioxidants might be losing up to 50%. So this is a very good option when you want to add any bioactives or maybe vitamins or such kind of antioxidants for the improvement of the product quality, or maybe preparing some kind of health-based products like gripe water for the kids. So it contains a lot of sensitive components and flavors. So whereas if you go for thermal processing, the quality will be impaired. So one can actually look for this as a process option. Okay. So with that, actually, I'll stop now. Maybe we'll continue at 2 o'clock. Okay. So if you have any clarifications, maybe you can ask now also, or if you'd like to ask at 3 o'clock, that's also possible. Am I clear to you all so far? Did it make any sense? Whatever you
Yes,
have.
sir.
You are clear.
We take any questions, or I think it's a break for you, no? No other lecture is there continuation. So I'll stop sharing.
It's an excellent presentation, sir. Thank you so much. This is Dr. Adhikari from Bangalore.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. You are from which institute, sir?
Yeah, I am a professor in New Horizon College of Engineering. It is a private top 4 college of Bangalore.
Okay, great. Good to learn that.
And earlier I was in Blue Star Cold Storage.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
In industry.
Right. Very good.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. And so if questions are there, we will take up 1 or 2. Otherwise, we will stop here and we will start at 2 o'clock sharp.
Thank you, Professor Rao.
Somebody has raised hand. Who is this?
I hope if you have any question, you can. Otherwise, you can stop and join at 2 o'clock. Please don't delay.
Hello,
Thank
TKG
you.
sir.
Yes.
TKG, sir.
Yes.
Sir, very good afternoon.
Very good afternoon.
Sir, this is Dr. Adhikari. I have a small request. If possible, can you please include one session on cold storage capacity dimension calculation design?
Look, specifically one cold storage design is not possible in a class. Then everything could have been in a class, right? So definitely I will give all the inputs so that it can be done easily.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So we will be meeting at 2 o'clock. Till then, bye.
Okay, sir. Same link,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
2 o'clock also same link.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Same link, same thing.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.